Hello and welcome to B Shifter. John Vance here along with Nick Brunacini and Terry Garrison. And today we are asking the Chiefs. So we reached out to the internets and asked people to submit questions to us. And we're going to get to those in a little bit. So it's an exciting day here. You know what's even more exciting is it's our brand new studio. So if you're joining us on YouTube, this is the first YouTube offering that we've had ever. So people get to enjoy this on YouTube, which is pretty darn exciting. Right, guys?
Very exciting.
That's it. Mm-hmm. I'm like a new bride on her wedding night.
All right. Well, I've already managed to turn the camera off, so there we go. We're back.
We're 2/3 live.
Yeah, we're almost live, so that's pretty good. So let's just talk a little bit about the studio because I'm sure we'll be evolving this as time goes on. But this was a remodel here at the building, and then we've had all this video equipment put in.
Yes, we started all this in the late 90s as Across the Street Productions. And our goal then was to produce the second edition of Fire Command curriculum package. And that included DVDs. It was VHS at the time, and then it evolved into DVDs. So we've been producing video for quite a while. I don't know. Since the mid-'90s, we've been screwing around. It started when we worked for the Phoenix Fire Department. And when we got into training, there was a video component of it, and we just we're doubling down. So when we first went into business, we had a full video production, and now that we've moved into the AVB CTC, we got that ramped up here, and we have the same capabilities again. So a lot of the stuff we'll do, like especially the podcast, you can listen to it or you can watch it. But we'll do more and more video-related stuff that just kind of moving on.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's really cool to be able to work in here. So if you see weird things on the screen, remember, we're firefighters that are trying to be video guys. So
I actually have my hands taped down. I feel like when I visited my grandmother and she got a new couch and it had plastic on it, I was able to sit on it. This is the first time. It's got a new podcast smell.
It kind of does, yeah.
I hope that lasts a long time.
It's not Scotch guarded, though. Nothing is Scotch guarded yet.
I got my hands down here. I'm not touching anything. I do have water on the table, and that was probably a poor move on your part, John, to allow us to do that.
No, you have to have fluids.
Yeah, most anal retentive studio people ban it, but
we're B shifters, so yeah, exactly.
We're gonna ruin something at some point, right?
Yeah, we plan on it.
It's a party.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen.
Yeah. But it's we're not going to do anything harder than a R rating ever, maybe.
A hard R.
Like a pirate R.
We're going to try to stay out of the NC-17 areas. Yeah, we're not going. Now, if we were doing EMS training, there would be some of that. You have to when you're talking about treating the human form. See, I never understood that about the whole censorship in TV. It's like with the fire department shows, like Cops, and then it would be ER, Life in the ER, and it was all cutting edge 911 response stuff. And they would cut to the ER scene, and they've got a flayed chest, and they're opening it up, and the whole thing, and you're seeing all the organs and the blood clots, and then they blur the parts of the body, and you think, oh, okay, I can see into the body cavity. It's just I can't see a nipple.
Well,
so it made no sense to
Nick,
me.
the good news for everybody is we will not be showing any of that nakedness when we do our anatomy and physiology of leadership stuff.
No,
we don't need bodies for that. We can talk about it.
It's metaphorical. We do a lot of metaphor here.
Yeah, we don't need a.
No, but sometimes I fantasize about that.
I know you do.
Of doing just full-blown science videos for B shifters. Well, maybe we evolved to it, Terry. I don't know.
Bring in lizards.
Yeah.
Lizards.
Well, they crawl on you and they don't fall off.
Oh,
Lizards
yeah,
are good. They're pointing. Look at that. See where the lizard's going? Don't go there.
Yeah. You've been using lizards a lot lately. I guess you're a desert guy because the article you just wrote.
Oh yeah,
talked about lizard tails, didn't you?
well, because
Lizard tail and ant piles.
Yeah.
I do that because I look a lot like one after living in the desert for 65 years. You kind of get that.
Yeah, it'll do it. Yeah, it's the brightest light in this hemisphere.
Either that or death.
Yeah.
Well, you guys want to get to some questions?
Sure.
Sure,
right.
why not? Exactly.
So everyone who sent questions in or that we use, they're going to get a Bruno OG IC T-Shirt from the B-Shifter store. You can go to bshifter.com, check out the B-Shifter store if you want to get a T-shirt for yourself. Or better yet, next time that we ask for questions, send in a question and you can get one for free.
Wow, that's great.
Questions. So today we're looking for questions and fire helmets.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, the fire helmet thing's going good too. Before we get into questions, you got one today.
Yeah, we put the fire thing out about a week ago, and we've got 5 helmets so far.
It's amazing. People have, and the helmets look so good. All the different colors. Every helmet, even though they all kind of are similar, they each have their unique personality. It's pretty amazing.
It's going to be the entryway of Mojo when we start filling it up.
It's pretty cool.
No, I think so. It's yeah. It's like B-Shifter's got to take over a building and decorate it.
Yeah.
That's who we are.
Just think there was a brain in every one of those helmets you're going to have up there.
Yeah,
Anatomy.
they may have been close to death many times while they were wearing that helmet.
Yeah, the
they
helmet
escaped
saved
it constantly. And in fact, I can see that several of those helmets they're coated in cancer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we've learned quite a bit in our mission, but I think you can hang them up in a place and just not touch them and leave them alone and we'll be fine.
Yeah, don't lick them.
No, exactly.
Yeah, they'll be up.
So
Where everyone can enjoy them when they come to visit.
we can ponder who we are.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. So
Yeah.
we'll put some pictures up as the wall continues to progress.
Exactly.
I think that's somebody else's.
I think that's my ring.
Your ring
Yeah,
camera.
every time somebody comes up to my front door at my house, I get to hear that.
Oh, I thought an angel got its wings.
Are you hearing something?
Yeah.
Oh,
You
man,
can't
I'm
hear. You
old.
can't hear anything.
I hear.
I'm going to turn this off.
Okay.
So let's get into the questions, and I hopefully am doing question etiquette right. I'm not going to use their real names, so they're not incriminated by their agencies, but I'm using their initials so they know they're getting a T-shirt. So
Perfect.
hopefully that works
they'll
out.
know. Yeah.
Okay. The first question comes from LK, and LK's question is, what is some must-have advice you would give someone promoting to the battalion chief's position? Must-have advice for new battalion chiefs from LK.
Must have it, Mr. and Mrs. LK, right?
Or.
we right? Or, yeah. You know, it's interesting because when you go from that supervisory role into that management role, everybody gets extremely nervous about that because there's a whole lot of management that is kind of handed to you when you're a BC. Some organizations more than others, they hand you a lot of management stuff as you move into the BC. But I think the must-have advice I would say is continue to be a leader. So, you know, don't get caught up, and it's important, and you got to do your management role, but don't get caught up. Remember, you're a leader. You were selected for that position to lead people, and don't turn your back on the people. You know, you're there for the firefighters to support the fire captains. And you get to do that from battalion chief position very well. Nick always says that it's the best job he ever had was the battalion chief in Battalion 3, and he'll probably talk about that. But I think it was probably the key to being a battalion chief is focus on the people that you're serving, and the people that you're serving are your fire companies. And support your fire companies. Do everything you can so that they can go out and do the best job they can do for the customer. Don't get caught up with all the, the politics, because you start getting into the organizational political level. And I know you got to deal with that and kind of work through that. But yeah, focus on your role as a leader, and the rest of it will kind of come. In fact, somebody will help you with that. There's probably people that are maybe at a lower level that are better at some of those management functions. And if you're just nice to them and support them, and I think you probably get a lot of help in that position. Does that make sense to kick that off? I know it's just the first part of that, but
yeah, and then that's the best BCs were the leaders of the battalion that I worked for. And, you know, that was
Well, you remember that. Well, we had battalions. You and I worked at the same fire station on the east side of town, at southeast side of town, kind of south, I guess, or central. But and we knew that when we had a battalion chief come into our station, they would ask one or two things. The ones that we really enjoyed working for would ask, "What do you need?" And then we had people that we worked for who would come in and say, "What'd you do?" And it's like when you promoted to battalion chief, were you always that way, or are you in a position of authority now that you have to treat people different because you've reached that rank? But we knew the people that were supporting us, and you could feel that when they walk into the station.
Well, you would see somebody who was a certain kind of asshole is like an engineer and a company officer. And then when they promoted to battalion chief, they would become a completely different kind of asshole. They wouldn't resemble their last one. So it would throw you off balance. As you wouldn't know how to deal with them, as you'd like, oh, no. You invented things. Like personnel rules were made because of things you did, and now you're different. You're not that person anymore. In fact, you don't even claim to know who you used to be. So that was kind of a weird thing. I think there's a big difference between being a company officer and a BC. And like a captain, as a company officer, you set the tone for the crew. You were kind of the attitude of the crew. So the thing you talked about, working with knuckleheads. Well, see, the knuckleheads had to follow and be part of the crew. And you think, no, you don't get to do that. So this is the way this is going to look for us now. That's the common thing when you become a battalion chief, is you set the tone for the battalion pretty much. Mm-hmm. See, and I would tell the company officer that it took me a while to figure this out. It's that I don't run when I was a battalion chief, I think, what was there? 12 stations in the 3rd Battalion with like 16 units that ran out of them. Something like that. Well, when I met with the company officer, I don't run your station, you do. And so we all know what we're supposed to do is you do task level work and I do strategic and tactical level work. So what I do needs to support what you're doing. And that's the way this works. So
you made me think, Nick. So when we talk about somebody goes to the first line supervisor, sometimes they try to be the best firefighter they can be in that position as captain, right? Yeah. So no, you're the captain now. You're not. Yeah. You're not supposed to be the best firefighter on the crew. You're supposed to be the best captain on the crew. And I think that kind of transitions too when they go to that battalion chief level. Is you're no longer a captain. You're not going to run that fire station. Let the captain run the fire station. You're running your battalion. Your job is a battalion chief now. And a lot of times when people first make promotions, they have a little bit of problem figuring that role out a little bit, right?
As an example to follow up with that is I watched a deputy chief once who wasn't even working in the field. They were like a staff chief, and they were pulling the duty, and so they ended up at a fire one day. And the thing's over, and it was I don't know. It came in as the first alarm, and the first couple companies put it out. So it was one of those things. Everybody responded, and then everybody left after the first one solved the problem. And so this guy's leaving, and he's wearing like a white shirt with a gold badge, whole deal. And engine whoever is loading hose, supply line. So he thinks, oh, I'm going to help him load supply line. So he jumps up on the tailboard, and he's sitting there. And I hear somebody talking and say, wow, look at that chief, man. He's actually doing something. And I looked at him and thought, you are a moron. I said, really? You think we show up to load hose, help you load hose? Pal. You load hose. We make sure that you come out of the building. That's Yeah. I'm not a hose dragger anymore. Yeah, if that's what you're looking for a boss, you should probably be a firefighter still. So I found whenever I got out of a vehicle, and this will help answer your question as a new BC, if I was going from my response vehicle to a command post and I passed somebody like an engineer that needed help, there were times I would stop to help them, and it screwed something up strategically because I wasn't doing my job. I thought, I'm going to help somebody on the task level. No, there's 800 people here to do that. There's 4 people to do the strategic part. So I'm going to stay out of your business, and I'm going to do my job so it makes your job safer and you more effective. So,
you know, there are times, you said it, I mean, that's not the role of a battalion chief. There's probably times, especially here in Arizona, when it's 115 degrees and they, you know, you want to get back to help them get back. You may, if everything's done, if you're done with your job completely, and you go over and you give them a hand, you or your driver or whoever, you could do that. But that's a,
you know what I do
when
instead?
people do that, they do that because they're looking for the, you know, they're trying to.
It's a Peter principle thing. It's more comfortable to do what you had done.
And a lot of times they're just looking for the pat on the, hey, thanks for helping us, Chief. You know, how many times have you actually had firefighters tell you when you're in BC, Chief, step out of the way, will you?
Yeah, because you get in their way. You know what I would do, Terry?
We got a system.
I figured
Just
out.
Step over there.
What I figured out is when I was in those situations, I would get like a rack of cold water and take it over.
See, that's very supportive.
Or the media's there. I'd say, you guys finish loading your hose. I'll go take it. Because I know none of you want to talk to somebody with a camera. I'll go take care of that. So it's those kind of things that you can pick up the slack in those areas, and that is huge for them. That does not go unnoticed. Is they're like, no, he took care of the media, and we look like a bunch of pros now, and yada yada yada. So
I loved it when a battalion chief. Now this is when you really want to support the crews. Is when you're eating dinner and you're a battalion chief, and they get that EMS call and they have to get up and leave. And there's battalion chiefs who'll go cover up their dinners or put plates over them or something.
Yeah.
Now that when you come back from a call and you saw your battalion chief did that, him and his driver, you go, wow. Now that's kind of supportive, right? That's the kind of support.
Yeah, because if you think back to those times, like when I was on a ladder and the engine got a call, we would put the napkins over their plates, but before we would put like, I don't know, hair in the food or things like that. You would screw with your friends.
Screw with your friends.
So, like when you become a battalion chief, there's less of that screwing with. You could do a little bit, but it's better if you're screwing with another battalion chief or even like your boss. Screw it up is always better.
So John, you've been there, you've done that. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, you're married. Damn it, what do you do?
I'm married.
You're wearing a great shirt. What do you think?
I think the best advice for a battalion chief is to realize that you're no longer a company officer. I mean, I think that is really good advice. That you're now responsible. In my case, it's the whole shift, but your whole battalion, whatever that is. So you have to start flying at that level instead of, the minutia and the day-to-day operations. And I think right now we just added some new positions to my department, and the BCs are doing a really good job at letting the captains run the stations, and because they were running the station before. And now they've stepped back and become a little more administrative, and they're doing some other projects and helping prepare budgets and that kind of thing. So there's a separation there, and you have to realize what that separation is.
Let me share this story. I worked for a large organization, and uniforms were a big deal to some people in that organization. They weren't a big deal to me. You're given a uniform, you wear a uniform, make sure it looks good, and just go out and do your job. We're service delivery people, and a lot of what we do is like construction work, right? And you get a lot of your customers on you in our business. So there was a group of division chiefs who thought that I was way too lax with uniforms, and we were trying to develop a uniform policy, and they thought way too much about this, I thought. So one of them you've heard me talk about is the caps. So you had the baseball cap that they had a temperature that it had to reach a certain temperature before you could put on a baseball hat outside. It had to lower to a certain temperature before you could put a beanie on. So they were just really caught up in uniform. So I came in with a pretty simple uniform policy and gave the options to the captains. And my deal towards the division chiefs was, and we had hundreds of division chiefs, was that let the fire captains manage uniforms at their station. They know what the crew's going to be doing that day. They know if the crew's going to go to a school and do a public education, they should be in this uniform. If they're out doing something else, they need to be in this uniform. If they're training, they need to dress like this. Well, one of the newer, and I was really surprised, it was a newer chief officer sent a letter out after I made my announcement and put it out there that, hey, the captains are going to control uniforms. He sent a letter out to the entire battalion saying pretty much, ignore that chief. Here's the way we're going to do it in our district. And and I got a letter, and so my assistant chief of operation comes in. He goes, "What do you think of this?" And I look at it, and it's like, wow, that doesn't seem right, does it? Yeah. And he basically said, ignore everything he says. You're going to wear this uniform. You're going to wear your white shirt or your button-down shirt from 8 to 5, and you're going to be able to wear your T-shirt, your uniform T-shirt, when you're under your turnouts, when you're working out, or when you're in the station. It's like, well, that's not a T-shirt. That's an undershirt, right? So that's a total different thing. So I had to call that chief officer in. Actually, I kind of used a chain of command. I said, no, he can't do that. This directive came down from the fire chief. I don't make a lot of directives, and I don't want to make too many about uniforms. But the battalion chief, or in this case, the district chief, who was a battalion chief level, tried to manage outside the system. Well, that's the other thing I see with battalion chiefs is that for some reason that they want to make and it starts from a very positive point, I think, because they want their battalion to be prideful and be the best, and it's kind of that competitive deal. We want to be better than that battalion over there, that shift over there. But what it does, if you take it too far, it looks really goofy, and they get out of whack with the rest of the organization.
Well, you look at what he did is the fire chief came out and said this, and then he said, well, he's not your boss, I am, and this is what it is. So I kind of agree with you, is it's in between you and him.
Right.
One down. So the ops chief?
Right.
I would have told the ops chief he needs to manage uniforms. That's what he wants to do. He's going to fire prevention.
Well,
because they go and do inspections and they got badges and all that, and they'll look great. So
that was part of our discussion, is how long does he actually want to be out there? And it was so I guess the other thing with the battalion chief is you actually get, we've talked about that each fire station really is kind of a McDonald's franchise. And now as a battalion chief, you may have 12 McDonald's franchises, but you got to keep them somewhat consistent with the rest of the organization and make that work, right? So consistency, try to stay in line with the other battalion chiefs. It's okay to be competitive and have fun with it, but when you get so out of whack that I've seen that in just about every organization I've worked in, and you're nodding your head because you've seen it too.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Well, I was a brand new BC. I go on a call, and I was in a different battalion, and I went on a call with 18. And Battalion 3 would see 18 all the time. They're in another battalion. I show up, and it's like it's 8:30 in the morning. So it's a new shift, and they all look extremely good. Beautiful blue T-shirts, whole deal. They turn around, and it's an Engine 18 shirt. They're all wearing Engine 18 shirts. And you're like, man, that's neat, but it does not say Phoenix Fire Department on that shirt anywhere. So, hey, you guys may want to – that's a great thing, and you can wear it on your day off, but that's not a uniform shirt. I said, maybe we could do something where you get a patch and you put it on your sleeve for your station. I said, that's baller right there. But – if you're going to change the uniform, you have to do that to the uniform committee. Well,
Nick, you're right on, and that's actually where this whole uniform thing started with in this organization I worked in. The previous chief had problems because everybody did what you're saying. They went off and splintered off, and they were very proud of their own little area, and they took pride in that. That's okay. Do a patch, do something on the shoulder, but on the back of your shirt, it's got to say the team you play for, which is whatever fire department that is.
Who's paying you? Who's writing the check every 2 weeks that goes into your account? That's who you're working for.
So I would like that battalion chief that went out to that fire station to do that. Say, hey, you guys are in the right uniform. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And this is the uniform of the day. And not make it any bigger than that. I had to come up with a policy about baseball hats where – because it just got ridiculous. I said it has to be a fire department hat. It's got to be blue, and the bill goes forward. That's all I want. You can't have Joe's Pizza Pie or whatever on the hat. Hats will go crazy kind of, but that's the only thing about uniforms. Just the proper uniform and do the best you can with that. And don't try not to. You will spend a lot of time working on.
It's a waste. It's a waste of time, and it's when you can't fix the real issues in your fire department. That's what we're going to spend our time doing: is dicking with grooming standards, tattoos, and uniforms, because that's all that we can figure out and agree on.
The best thing,
it's not smart.
If you're a new battalion chief and you want to, we talk about being a servant leader and all that, which I think is important. But go out and train with your crew. Get some battalion level training. Show them that you know what you're doing in your sport. And firefighters will grumble the first 15 minutes they find out that you have training that day. But once they get to the training site, they all get together. They always enjoy it, and then they always go away pretty happy. Most firefighters will like training. But so then now we're talking hazard zone operations as the chief officer, right? So to kind of continue rolling the question. So what are the expectations for a new chief officer when they move into a battalion chief role in the hazard zone? We talked a little bit about the leadership stuff and some of the management, get help with that. But on the hazard zone, you got a pretty specific position and function on the hazard zone. The tactical level boss or IC number 2, and neither one of those should look like that nowadays, right?
No,
and not lately.
Well, and he started in 1984, and that was normal. That's what it would have looked like, somewhat. Now, it wasn't normal for us because we had a different boss.
Yeah.
And so when he would show up, if our fire chief showed up and there was a battalion chief that looked like that was covered with suit and everything else, he would take him to a psychologist and say, "Why are you like this?" No, they would find out this isn't your job anymore. It would almost be like him starting an IV on a call.
Yeah.
Why do you do this? We have paramedics for this.
Yeah.
But that's probably a bad example using that department. And
what I wanted to do is kind of show that it's two different evolutions of departments, right? And when we show a picture and talk about somebody like that, we need to make sure we get a little bit of the background and where they were then, because in our organization there was a time that we saw battalion chiefs like that, and then there was a time we saw them where they wouldn't go anywhere near a fire. So it's that the position and function of a battalion chief right now. We talk about, we give we give a blue card class on tactical level bosses. If you want to know how to be a tactician at the tactical level or battalion chief, attend the blue card session, and it lays it out. But that's where we were weak all those years, right? We were weak. We're really good at the IC. We're good at the strategic level. We were good at the task level, and we were weak at the tactical level. So now
that's where these guys were strong. Like New York City has very strong tactical level bosses. That's how they manage the point of attack. Is Boston, is those places. Okay, make sure, and essentially what that is make sure that we have everything in place that we're going to get water on the fire and put this thing out. So number one. So that is a good use of tactical level bosses to do that. But this system has evolved, like you say, and the more and more you could say, okay, this is where BC should end up on the fire ground.
That's it.
Is any attack position where there's 3 or more companies, you got to somehow, that's a span of control issue. All of that stuff. But there's you got to be careful about that kind of thing. See, the other part is I don't know who posted that. And in my fire department, I knew everybody. Right. And so you could see the people who are saying, we should do it more like this. And you think, no, that's wrong. So you would go, and that was the job of the bosses, is to go out and educate everybody. No, this is the way this is supposed to look.
Well, nowadays, just with the picture, just one more time, is that anybody can take anything you do from this point on will show up in a picture somewhere, taken out of context, and I don't know what the context of that doesn't look right to me. But I don't know what I tell you what, I'd like to have a beer with the guy, right? But it's taken out of, you don't know where it came from or what. But what we're saying is, if you're a battalion chief in today's world, or if you're an incident commander, that's not what an incident commander looks like. Now, a battalion chief at the tactical level, how do we want them to dress?
Yeah, they're going to be in the warm zone, so they're going to be turned out.
We
But during
turned
this
out,
era,
right?
when they took that picture, Vance, the pictures on the cover of most fire service journals, and at least every other one, was a firefighter sticking their head out of an upper story window with smoke
Absolutely.
behind them, vomiting, or having long streams of mucus out of their mouth and nose. And that way, say, oh, that's where you belong. Yeah. And you're like, no, you stop it. You don't understand enough about what we do to tell me that I should be killing myself right now. That's inappropriate. Yeah, exactly. Norman Schwarzkopf, during the last battlefield general, was never on the battlefield during his tenure.
Yeah.
He was in the command post or where he wasn't even in the same country most of the time, leading that effort. You think that, they figured out how this works. There's a span, control, and all of that that we use to do this.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go to question number 2.
I think we beat the balls off that
Yeah,
one.
that was good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, LK. You'll be receiving your OG IC T-Shirt from B Shifter. Next question. How to lead, change, and influence passive-aggressive senior tendered firefighters and senior men. Basically, how do you handle passive-aggressive minimum standard employees who do just enough? So it sounds like a lack of motivation among some of this crew. How do you lead the passive-aggressive seasoned firefighters who do just enough?
Leadership. I found that, like, when you promoted people that actually had done the work and were respected in their rank that they possessed before they promoted, those generally were not the passive-aggressive people that you're talking about. And in fact, I just recently read a timeless tactical truth that said, do not expect gratitude when you allow an employee to be substandard.
Yeah.
So don't expect them to say, hey, thanks for overlooking my deficiencies and we're okay. And those people that are passive-aggressive, refuse to do anything, and we've all supervised those type of people, there's going to come a moment where you're going to have to either put up or shut up as a boss. And they will eventually do something that will require you to eventually do something. And what I would do is I would just, and that always happens in a public setting. And so I guess just do your job, and when try to manage in a way that keeps them more productive and engaged, but they're not, you can't make them, you can't unmake what you got coming in. So, and then just, that's it. When they did their final deal and you thought, well, this is what we've been coming towards. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, you're going to go home now. And I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to hand it off to the personnel people that are going to figure out what to do with you next.
So,
so that's kind of what I suggest.
What was the name of the person that wrote that?
That came to us from
Our initials?
FM.
Dear FM, you FM. No, I didn't say that. Listen, FM, if you're out there, not only do you know who that person is in your organization, but everybody that works around them knows who that person is that you just described, right?
Yep.
Because we have people within our organizations. Like Nick and I used to tell you, we could tell you the next engineer that was going to run a red light and possibly kill somebody. And then when it happens, the predictable surprise. Oh, wow, we're surprised that happened. No, we're not. We knew it was going to happen to him because we knew how he drove. He went too fast, and his boss didn't supervise him. That's a direct supervision issue. And hopefully FM is the supervisor, but I would bet that FM is not the supervisor. I would bet that FM is a witness on the side, maybe the same rank, maybe an engineer, maybe another person in the organization, but that could be supervised. You know, that whole passive-aggressive is kind of like attitude we talk about it, where people say, well, he's got a bad attitude. How do you manage that? It's like, well, okay, what does he do? And then they start describing actions. Well, I could manage actions. I could change people's action, and I don't give a shit what their attitude is. I'll manage their act. Now, I would like them to have a good attitude, but when you got a bad attitude and I tell you to do your job, surprise, your attitude doesn't get better, right?
Yeah.
So with that whole passive-aggressive thing, you just got to call it what it is. And, you know, we talk about the accountability model and how you set expectations, and then you train to those expectations, you monitor their performance, and then you hold them accountable. That right there, you'll have a lot of opportunities to do that. So that's a boss issue right there, to allow somebody to act like that. And people are good at it. I mean, they are absolutely good at it. Now, don't confuse that with somebody who's just lazy and they're just getting by. But if they have this whole passive aggressive, now they got an attitude that goes along with their laziness, you got to deal with that, because that's a cancer in the organization. And FM will tell you that he knows about it, or she, and everybody else knows about it, and everybody's waiting for the boss to manage it. And then I've come into organizations as a new fire chief, and the first thing they tell me is, are you going to deal with this guy? Because this guy's that guy, right? And so, well, what have you guys done with him? What did his last boss do with him? Well, he didn't do anything, ignored him. Well, you're his boss now, and I'm the fire chief, and we're not going to ignore him no more. We're going to set some expectations, and we're going to hold him. If it's uncomfortable in a fire station or in a workplace, it should be uncomfortable for that guy, not everybody around him. So you really kind of got to develop.
No, that's the opposite. It's always they're always the ones that are comfortable.
That's what I'm saying. You got to make it. So you got to create some uncomfortableness for that guy through some sort of structured plan that makes him miserable. Now, what they'll do is they'll probably go to another fire station. Say, I'll show you passive aggressive, right? Because I'm going to be right out in front, passive aggressive. We need to fix this behavior. But those kind of guys, we let those guys. I joked at you about it. Normalization of meanness, normalization of laziness in the fire service. We got to. Not that it's out there, but when you see those guys and they start pocketing, that spreads.
Well, and those people exist, and you're not going to change them. I'm not going to take. I was a battalion chief. There were 16 company officers in my battalion. 3 of them were assholes, and they were just assholes. Everybody knew they were assholes. If you gave them a test that said list the assholes, 90% would pick the same 3 people on the list. So you learned how to manage them. And so if there was ever anything that came up, you had to go talk to them and say, don't do this again. Well, what are you going to do about it? Well, this is the plan. I'm done screwing with you. Just so you know. And it's almost like a professional agreement. And it was, one of them said, okay, what do I have to do that I don't see you anymore? I said, you can't get complaints anymore. Well, that's going to be hard. Well, of course it's hard, because you don't like anyone in your first due area. And you want to go on the most calls, but you don't want to do anything on them. That's what makes you an asshole. So we agreed on that. And I said, well, just quit talking. And he had a capable crew. And he figured out, I could do that. And I said, yeah, and we had HEPA mask and the whole thing. Put a mask on and gloves and just stand there. They'll see you're a captain and just you're documenting. And he says, I think that's not a bad idea. And we did that, and I never had another issue from his station. And people said, well, you didn't fix him. I thought, I'm not his mom or dad, pal. He's older than I am.
But you did in a way fix him, though. I would tell you that you fixed him. You used his crew and you worked, but you got him moving in the right direction. Now, for me, I had a thought there that just really blew past me. But what I used to do as a battalion chief, we would have how many companies?
Anywhere from 12 to 16, depending on your battalion.
There was always an asshole, right?
Oh, every battalion.
And our fire chief wanted it to, but kind of back to the battalion chief question too. And our fire chief wanted us to go out and spend time with our companies to go and check up on them. Do you need anything? Nice seeing you. See you later, and leave. The only time you see a battalion chief is when you're in trouble. That's bad. You want your battalion chiefs to stop by. So I would stop by 2 or 3 or 4 fire stations a shift. You couldn't make them all in one shift because of calls and stuff. Start with that guy. Start with the assholes. Because they're no fun to be around, but you have to go spend some time with them, do exactly what Nick says. If you're an asshole again next shift, then I'm going to be spending time with you. So you made it uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Well, every time he caused me to do something, and he had a number of complaints over a period of a few months, like 3 complaints from outside, 2 complaints from inside. The 3 citizen complaints, 2 of them were just ridiculous. And he was an asshole, but he wasn't the problem at the call.
Yeah.
And so you could figure that out and say, okay, you kind of get a pass on these 2. And, I understand this, as I went on the same calls and I worked with the same people. We're not saving people's lives. We're going out and just uncomplicating their life for 10 minutes. It's what comes with the job, pal. It's what we do now. You make a lot more money than all the lawyers that work in your first due area. Guarantee you that. So show up and be nice. Well, the 2 complaints from inside, I said, no, I know these 2 people. Everybody in the fire department does, and it's right. Nobody wants to work with you. I deal with that every day. We're done. I'm done with your nonsense. So it became harder and harder for me. And what you said, it's if I'm going to run your station, you're not going to be here much longer.
That's it. So, that's it. You're
a grown-ass man. Start acting like one.
You got to do it. You got to tell them what they are. You got to hold the mirror up and say, do you realize what an asshole you really are? I mean, you say that in the best way you can, but you got to tell people
it's unacceptable. You can't do this and this anymore. Stop it.
These annual EPARs and Employee Performance Achievement Report, those things, you could throw those in the trash. Well, you need to manage issues right then, right there. And if you got a guy that's acting like that or a girl, you need to send their boss to them, because everybody's got a boss, and let it roll downhill, make their boss fix. Because that's another thing. You can't fix a firefighter as a battalion chief. That company officer who's with that person every day, if that's a captain or an engine or a firefighter or an engineer, that captain has to fix it. And if it's a captain, the BC's got to fix it. If it's a BC, he's got a boss and all the way up the line. You got to be fixed by somebody that can set your expectations and monitor what you do every day and call bullshit on the stuff you do, because eventually it will impact customers. If it's a company level person, it will impact your customer deliveries somewhere along the line. That is going to happen.
But you got to be prepared, because not everybody agrees with that. I was a BC. There was a firefighter, a probationary firefighter, who was upside down. Shouldn't have been a firefighter. Needed to be fired. I go and talk to his captain. I said, "You're the 3rd station. The first 2 said to fire him." He says, "I don't hire him and I don't fire him." I said, "You should not be a captain then." "Well, what are you talking about?" I said, I can promote and demote." "What's that mean?" "It means you're done having recruits right now, moron, and we'll talk later, but you don't get to be a sloth anymore." So we...
what you're talking about is a layered problem.
Yeah.
Now you got a dysfunctional firefighter with a dysfunctional captain, so the boss wasn't able to manage it. So now you got the layer. So now the next boss has to manage, which you did, the captain, and then the captain's got a choice now. Am I going to manage this guy or not? Or am I going to have Nick Brunacini coming by every...
This idiot battalion chief who's going crazy. Yeah, well, yeah. Boy, you're a 180. No, we always did our jobs like we were supposed to. Yeah.
They had a deal in Glendale, and it's probably throughout the valley here, and they would call guys on it, and it was kind of like a code red on firefighters, and they wouldn't hit them with socks, full of soap. But what they did is they would tell them, "Hey, live your interview." That seemed. Have you heard that?
Oh yeah.
And it's a phrase that you can open a conversation with at a captain. Now it doesn't go anywhere if you don't follow up. All that becomes just blowing smoke. But if you're actually telling guys, "Hey, you said you were going to do this. This is the job." Nick's grinning, but it comes back to accountability. You say that on the front end, but then you have to do it, right? You just can't say that and everybody runs away and they fart rainbows. You got to follow up.
It was easier when you were on a fire company to take care of this. And I was a firefighter at the time, and I worked at a multi-company station. And there was an individual on another crew who was an engineer who was kind of a dickhead, and he had some issues. And he got into it with one of the firefighters on my engine, who was he was a veteran, and he had served in the military and was in the Guard and did some stuff. And and he had some explosives. And at some point, this guy's locker ended up blowing up. And it was kind of, and those were the old days when you could do, you could
talking
blow
a real code red.
Yeah, you could blow a guy's locker up when you didn't agree with something he did. But I think we've left that era of the fire service.
You want me
us.
on that wall?
Yeah, but
we can't do that.
It's always disconcerting where you hear low-level explosions at the fire station. You think, oh, they did it. They did it.
Yeah, you don't want ATF showing up.
No,
trying to investigate something.
And you think, so it was good getting to be firefighters when we were, because you could you lived through some things that you figured, we shouldn't do that maybe again, or this, or it was,
And I say the conversations where you're giving somebody a wake-up call works about half the time, at least in my experience. So like half the time you'll have those, and it's kind of a epiphany for those people. Like, wow, I didn't realize I was being perceived that way, and it's because they're really good, conscious people. And then about half the time they're purposely like that because they were raised by wolves.
Yeah, but that's just the beginning part. The talking to them and half of them changed. If you get half, that's pretty good. That's just the beginning part. Then you got to follow through and do all the other stuff. That's where you can't drop the ball with them. And eventually, hopefully they leave, but they stay. We know who they are. Yeah. But you have to do something organizationally. You have to try to help.
See, as a BC, you had a lot of flexibility and freedom to what you could or could not do. Yeah. And there were times where you would get calls from a diverse group of people. Sometimes the police would call me looking for people. And I need to find this person and all of his contact info. And you're like, the police contact, what, huh? And he said, yeah, we got all of his fire department records, his contact. We need to get a hold of this person. And you did a little investigation. Why? Well, are you his boss? No, I'm kind of a layer or two above. Well, this person's done this and this and this. And you're like, oh my God, that's. So you would get a hold of that person and tell them you need to do something that involves a lawyer and probably retiring right now. If you don't do it now, there's a chance that your pension's going to get hung up. So, I mean, there were things that you would do to protect the fire department and the members. And sometimes that involved doing things that there wasn't a good solution. There was just a solution.
It's unfortunate because the real loser in all of that is the people that have to work around those knuckleheads. And that's the problem. So if you're the boss, you got to do something about it or go to the next level. But you just can't say, well, that's the way they are. Oh, he always loses his temper. That's just the way he is. No, that's...
Or he always steals the kiddie money.
Yeah, that's
when it gets over
$180.
No, you can have a thief working in the station. That's not going to work.
It's not okay for somebody to be an asshole.
Yeah.
It really isn't. You at least got to try to fix it. And
Terry, if you think about it, we're showing up to do a job. It's our occupation and career and what we said we're going to do. So, like, if you're a dentist, people come in with teeth that you fix. If you're a barber, it's hair. If you're a firefighter, it's 911. And I mean, so it's what we're supposed to do for a living. And a lot of the assholes, no, I don't want to go on these calls. It's a stupid call. There's nothing we're going to do for them. And you think, well, that's all true, but it's the call. We're going on the call. You don't get a choice. Be nice.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be this guy on the screen. We got to talk about your flair. When you get so into uniforms and stuff, that's the guy who's into uniforms, right? Yeah. I don't like the way your shirt's pressed or whatever
you can't. Uniforms are way down That's way down.
Garrison said it. You should look good. You should be presentable. Yeah. I mean, we have a uniform and. I think we've talked about it on this podcast before. Fire department figured it out. We got a very generous clothing allowance. The union president said, knock it down by 25%, and we're going to offset that. So this is the union president saying, no, we're going to reduce it, and we're going to give you fresh uniforms every year. Yeah. So you're going to buy your uniforms at like half price. And so, yeah. Because that was the running joke. What do you do with your uniform, Chuck? Buy a boat.
Yeah. Fishing with it. Well, those are 2 questions.
Wow.
We're out of time, but we have 3 more left. So we're going to do a part 2 and come back and nail those 3 questions the next time around. So congratulations to FM for getting a OG IC Bruno T-shirt.
Yeah, that was nice.
And if you would like to send questions in for a future episode, All of our email information is in the show notes, as well as contact information if you'd like to contact Terry or Nick. And we have links to the Bee Shifter store, links to the upcoming conference in Cincinnati in October, and more. So check out all the show notes, and we'll talk to everybody next time on Bee Shifter. See ya.